The Iraqi government is desperately asking the U.S. to intervene. Obama is resisting this. It's amazing. I want to play this one clip from Dick Cheney and then go to Mike Papantonio. Listen to this. This is what Dick Cheney said when he was affiliated with the George Herbert Walker Bush administration, who in their 100-hour war to throw Iraq out of Kuwait did not go all the way to Baghdad. Dick Cheney.
Once you got to Iraq and took it over and took down Saddam Hussein's government, then what are you going to put in its place? That's a very volatile part of the world, and if you take down the central government in Iraq, you can easily end up seeing pieces of Iraq fly off. Part of it the Syrians would like to have to the west. Part of eastern Iraq the Iranians would like to claim, fought over for 8 years. In the north, you've got the Kurds, and if the Kurds spin loose and join with the Kurds in Turkey, then you threaten the territorial integrity of Turkey. It's a quagmire if you go that far and try to take over Iraq. The other thing was casualties. Everyone was impressed with the fact that we were able to do our job with as few casualties as we had. But for the 146 Americans killed in action and for their families, it wasn't a cheap war. And the question for the president, in terms of whether or not we went on to Baghdad and took additional casualties in an effort to get Saddam Hussein, was how many additional dead Americans is Saddam worth? And our judgment was not very many, and I think we got it right.
Mike Papantonio on the line with me, host of Ring of Fire Radio, ringofireradio.com, and America's Attorney. And Pap, welcome back to the program.
Tom, how are you?
Good. I want to start out with this. Do you get Victoria Jones's news notes from the Talk Radio?
I don't. I don't.
You should subscribe to this. I'll send you a link to it. This is it's for the media, but it's the best daily news summary that I have. I rely on it a lot. And she's got some just amazing stuff here. Agence France Presse is doing some really good reporting on this. You and I started our radio programs back in, I'm not sure when you started Ring of Fire Radio. We started this show in early 2003. And but we were both starting our radio programs as George Bush had started this war in Iraq and as part of the anti-war movement. And we were saying, you do this war and it's going to be a disaster. I hate to say we were right, but we were right, yeah?
Well, we were right, and the people that started the war knew that we were right. It wasn't about any kind of rational discussion. There was no arm's length discussion about any of this, and the media was largely responsible for that. It was a war that was almost took you back to to the time when invasion, when there's something glorious, the Teddy Roosevelt days of let's invade and this is going to be great for America. We saw, with this war, we saw CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, with the big maps on the floor, and you'd have the commentators talking about how we're going to be here on Tuesday and then we're going to be here on Wednesday and we're going to lose this many, we're going to kill this many Iraqi soldiers. It was obscene. It was obscene by any standard. It was obscene when we heard that the embedded journalists could only report what they were told to report. And it was obscene that the journalists agreed to do that simply so they could have something to talk about on the air. It was obscene that we slaughtered, for no good reason, so many Americans and so many Iraqis. Slaughtered them. Sent soldiers to their death knowing it was for nothing. Bring soldiers home that have physical problems and psychological problems that are almost insurmountable. It was obscene. You knew it was obscene. Phil Donahue knew it was obscene on MSNBC, talked about it, and lost his job. But I want you to think about something, Tom, what we did here. Here's what we accomplished. At that point, there was no progressive media. You understand, Tom, you had just started. I had just started. Ed Schultz had just started. You had Sharpton who had just started. You had all of the folks that broke off from Air America Radio. They had just started. You didn't have the blogosphere organized like it is now. Compare Iraq with what could have happened in Syria. Back then, we had corporate media dying to go to the war, dying to kill American soldiers so they could make more money. And there was no voice to answer it. The only person that answered it that I can remember on corporate TV lost his job, and that was Phil Donahue.
Yeah, and Bill Maher as well on ABC.
And Bill Maher, absolutely, politically correct. And so what we have here is we have a new day. And had we had this in place, even as disjointed as it appears sometimes, had we had Jon Stewart on television then talking about the intricacies of this, had we had Bill Maher remain on television, had you been up and running full tilt, had I been running, I think all of this had a big impact on Syria. And the truth is, the corporate media has more blood on their hands than they'll ever be able to wipe off. They created this war just like they created the Spanish-American War. It was all the same kind of horrible, disgusting journalism.
Yeah, it was William Randolph Hearst famously sent the telegram to Frederick Remington down in Cuba saying, "Get me the pictures, I'll give you the war," for the Spanish-American War. And Remington supplied the pictures, and or at least the drawings of the what was it, the USS Maine?
Yes.
And remember, the Maine became that that battle cry. It was the equivalent of the Gulf of Tonkin. It's amazing. It's amazing.
But Tom, what about the journalist who knows what they're doing? What about the journalist who clearly says, "Yeah, I'm going to bite my tongue, and I'm going to read this teleprompter. I'm going to bite my tongue, and I'm going to say what the folks up on the 50th floor, the MBAs, tell me to say so I can sell more advertising."
Yeah.
What about that person's responsibility? And I think you drill right down, and how does that person sleep at night saying, "Yeah, I remember walking around these big flags on the floor, these big maps on the floor, talking about how this is going to be a 100-day war, and then we're going to go home"? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you
I know,
live
you know,
with yourself?
Keith Olbermann was a big cheerleader for the war, which is why he was kept on MSNBC.
I know.
But he had, I think, a crisis of conscience. I think it wasn't just, you know, which way is the wind blowing. I think he realized that he was wrong. I'm not sure that I could say that of anybody else, but I think you're absolutely right. By the way, I didn't want to let this pass. I understand this Pradaxa. This I'm seeing this drug advertised on television. My dad was on Coumadin because he'd had a heart attack and a stroke, and this is advertised as the new thing to get. And in the minute we've got left, I didn't want to miss the fact that you just did a big deal on this, right?
Yeah, just settled the case for $650 million for the claimants out there. Xarelto, well, that was Pradaxa. Xarelto is a case that we're going to be involved with now. It's exactly the same drug. It kills people the same way. It's the same kind of phonied up science. It's the same case of hide the truth from the FDA. It's the same case of the FDA bending over backwards for the drug company because somebody wants to get a job with a drug company. It's exactly the same case. Same quality of death, same awful experience that we saw with Pradaxa. And it's Xarelto. Johnson & Johnson and Bayer launched the drug knowing to this day it's unnecessary. There's really no big advantage at all. They launched it knowing that people aren't going to monitor themselves to find out if they have too much in their system. They launched it knowing that if people start bleeding to death, there's no way to stop the bleeding. They still sell it. It's an unnecessary drug, and it's killing hundreds of people, and the FDA still allows it to stay on the market. Xarelto is really no different than Pradaxa.
And Mike Papantonio, America's Lawyers, doing something about it. Hang on just a second.